welcome to another Lazy Review. I'm your host, Lazy Bones, owner and CEO of Lazy Bones Inc., and I am joined by Citizen HAL once again. You're stuck with me again. How are you doing?
Dog police, what are you waiting for? Dog police, nobody knows who you are.
Dog Police. I guess I should watch that. Is that like a? I saw you logged it yesterday. Is it like a short film?
It's a music video for the song Dog Police by the band Dog Police, featured on the album Dog Police.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that. All
That's
right.
what I'm here for. Spreading the word of Dog Police.
Okay, so we're gonna talk about two movies, one of which you've talked about already on your channel.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we should just start with The Flash.
The Flash.
The recent DC disaster.
The
DC,
Flash.
it stands for dog crap, so not a dog police reference, but the flesh.
No. The Flesh. In the Flesh.
In the flesh, yeah, in the flesh. I was gonna talk about this with Chaos because I even like started a whole recording up with him in the movie dude, but we had some recording issues, and the whole thing we kind of had to call off because of that. It was a mess, but you're stuck with me to talk about it now, so let's get into it.
Let's get into the Flash.
All right, you talked about it before, but there are definitely some things that have irked me since I watched it, not in theaters, but I watched when we watched it in Discord. But yeah, the biggest like crime I have with it is like comes with the fact that it's part of like this whole like dumpster fire of a franchise, the DC universe. I actually rewatched Man of Steel and BVS recently, and and both are even worse than I remember. BVS especially because they like the characters in it are like portrayed like Batman's like a complete homicidal maniac, and like Superman is just kind of like this like god who like looks down on humanity, and it almost seems like Zack Snyder himself is so like obsessed with how Watchmen portrays a lot of these superhuman like characters, or just comic book characters in general, that he took that approach but applied it to Batman and Superman, because like Batman feels like Rorschach in that movie more than Batman in the comics, and Superman's just kind of like a Dr. Manhattan type character. And not only that, but like the just the whole like green screen CGI mess and everything, and like the characters' motivations change with the flick of a dime. It's such a mess overall, but that's a whole other can of worms. Anyway, the Flash, and the worst crime the movie commits is how it completely like its only sole purpose is to really kind of revitalize the whole DC universe, because it doesn't feel like a Flash movie at all.
That's its worst crime?
Yeah. I mean, okay, not its worst crime, but the movie itself, besides the crimes of a certain actor in the movie.
Michael Keaton.
Michael Keaton, yeah, who is really lame in the movie, actually. He does not do a single cool thing in it. Nothing at all interesting.
No,
he's
that's
just like an action figure, actually.
I mean, well, that's the thing with the whole movie is like, I mean, really, the peak of it was the baby in the microwave scene. In terms of like something interesting actually happening. Because the rest of the movie, I mean, it's a DC movie trying to put out a fire with more fire. Like, it's nothing new that we haven't seen before with this franchise, honestly.
Yeah, it's like DC trying to ride off the coattails of Marvel. They were trying to do they're trying to do the Avengers but with Justice League, and now they're trying to do Spider-Man No Way Home but with the Flash. And first of all, like the worst part is like it's the first Flash movie we've ever gotten like in decades. No, like the first Flash movie we've gotten, period. And they just plug him into this whole crossover universe extravaganza. And so we're supposed to connect with this character that we don't really know all that well, except for the Justice League movies he was a part of, and they try to establish his universe a little bit with they I think you're introduced to like some of the side characters in his universe or whatever, but like they feel so like shoehorned in, like they feel almost like an obligation to be there rather
Yeah.
because they don't have any they serve zero purpose in the narrative. Like Iris West, like his love interest, like shows up once but never shows up until the very end, I think. But
Yeah.
it has
Yeah.
nothing to do with anything.
You can definitely tell the movie does not care for her. In which case, us as the audience, we don't care for her either.
Yeah, it's honestly I think it's honestly kind of funny that we've gotten two Sonic the Hedgehog movies before we've gotten a Flash movie, and those are way more successful in what they're trying to do than this movie does. Which
I mean,
I guess
yeah,
I shouldn't be too
because
surprised.
I mean those movies were made not to put out any fires, but just because, well, they were made purely because Sega was just like, we gotta have a Sonic movie, and it has to be kid friendly and yada yada yada. But like the filmmakers actually take like what they're given and make the best of it. Like that's why like the Sonic movies work for me, because they're so they are like obviously studio big budget kids movies, but they have a little they have a little personality to them. Whereas the Flash, I mean, from day one with this movie, it was never going to have a personality because, I mean, various reasons. But one of the biggest ones is DC just mishandled it so poorly.
Yeah, I mean, and like even like excluding all of that, like the multiverse stuff is so lame in this movie until the very end when they try to like shove in all those like characters and references and whatever, that I honestly wanted more of that because at least that was interesting.
Yeah, because they don't do anything with it. Like that scene, the multiverse scene, was why the movie was made and why Warner Brothers didn't shelve it after the whole Ezra Miller controversies. Like that one scene, I entirely buy as being the reason why this movie still happened. But
I honestly think
nothing
that
happened with it.
the whole like multiverse like montage at the end, it almost seemed like tacked on actually. Again though, like the whole multiverse angle of this movie is so corporate that I'm honestly convinced that the whole like montage at the end was only inserted there to distract from the Ezra Miller like allegations and everything like that. Because it's like what we said. Because we predicted that the fourth SpongeBob movie that's going to come out is going to be a whole multiverse extravaganza, and when corporations are in boiling water, that's when they shove in all the references and nostalgia.
Yeah, that's yeah, no, I 100% believe that's why this movie still happened, was because of that one scene, which is fine. Like I'm not against having a multiverse in a movie. I'm not against the idea of like, actually having the Flash like visit these other multiverses, but they don't do that. Like they just have them like stare on with indifference. And it's not even like character, and like half these characters are from actors who are dead. So like who is this appealing to? Like I get the Nicolas Cage Superman, like that's cool, like that's
That's only
funny.
something like only online nerds are gonna get though.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that, but again, they don't do anything with that. Like it's just Nicolas Cage Superman and that's it. Like, and I get Christopher Reeve Superman because everybody loves Christopher Reeve Superman, but again, they do literally zero things with that. They just have him show up and that's it. It boggles the mind where you're just like, all right, who, like, what am I supposed to get out of this? Like I get that you're trying to make me be like, oh, this is cool, but there's no reason for me to call it cool because there's nothing to it. It's literally just characters looking on with indifference. Like
I
that's
wanted it to be more batshit insane. I wanted
exactly.
it to be like a whole I wanted every single DC character in all of the movies come in out of portals. I wanted Halle Berry as Catwoman and Mr. Freeze from Batman and Robin like coming out and start making one-liners. That
If
I if
anything,
that happened, I would jump out of my seat and clap.
honestly, like if anything, if this movie did that, like it would suck because I know DC wouldn't do that properly, but like at least it would be something. Like it would be interesting. Like just something. Like that's the thing with this movie. There's nothing to it. There's nothing to these cameos. There's nothing to the actual story in quotes. There's no reason that Michael Keaton Batman should be played by Michael Keaton Batman. Like there's no reason that he's here except for nostalgia. But again, they don't take advantage of that nostalgia. Like I mean, ever since No Way Home, I've kind of turned around on nostalgia baiting slightly in that I don't completely like cast it off as nothing. Like because you can make it work to the movie's advantage. Like No Way Home was the first time that I actually saw I saw a movie use these nostalgia baiting tactics and it actually enhances the movie.
Yeah, that's fair.
The Flash is just another example of like why people don't like seeing this in movies because like they don't do anything interesting with them. They're just like, "Hey, remember these characters?" It's like, "Yeah, I remember them being in better movies and actually doing something cool in those better movies. What do you have them do here? Nothing." Like that's basically what this movie is, just nothing. Like no wonder it's completely flopping because it's like why would I want to go see it because it's not doing anything
No, it isn't.
except for the baby in the microwave scene. Like that is the that is
That's
the
where the movie peaked for you, right?
that is the only thing I got from this movie that made me chortle with laughter was Ezra Miller putting a baby in a microwave. Like that is one of the funniest things I've ever seen in a DC movie. Like one of the funniest things I've seen in a movie this year, but like one of the funniest things I've seen in a DC movie. Like it was incredible. But that's it. Like the longer I have not rewatched the movie to be fair in a couple of weeks, but you know,
You have no
like
desire to, like a Morbius.
yeah, no, exactly. Like I was like when
People
I
are
talk
saying people are saying this is this year's Morbius,
are
but
they?
like that would be an insult to Morbius because that beautiful train wreck does not deserve to be compared to the Flash because
Yeah.
nothing will ever reach the heights of Morbius.
I mean, I've seen people like compare it to Morbius in that it was like it's like on the same level of bombing as Morbius, but like yeah, I've not seen people like compare it like actually to Morbius. Yeah, but that's entirely true. Like it is not I don't know, like it's not as funny bad as Morbius. Like I can think of funny scenes in Morbius that are like microwave baby tier, whereas like here all this movie has is microwave baby. So like the rest of it is just I mean the dead actors in the multiverse and the Trix Rabbit cereal at the end is like funny in an objective sense because you're just like
It's
who the hell
astonishing like how
yeah
they how cynical and corporate the whole movie is. That
yeah
from that angle, I kind of enjoy that movie from that angle, but
sure
I can't really say this is like a fun watch party type movie, like where we're like laughing and stuff like that or hooting,
yeah
you know?
yeah no this is yeah so in that case yes it is no Morbius and not to say that like you know I'm gonna go back and say like oh I take back everything I said about the movie in my episode. Like I still stand by everything I said. I'm just saying it's gone down significantly worse ever since then. Not that I was expecting it not to. Like of course it was gonna go down in quality the longer it goes on.
Again, I think the thing you mentioned about the Michael Keaton Batman, because like the weird thing about this whole movie is that the whole multiverse angle it tackles is way different because when Barry does go back in time and to the first Thanksgiving to get turkeys off the menu, yeah, I had to make that joke. But when he actually does go back in time, uh, and the whole timeline and universe around him changes, how does that like? I'm still confused how that changes uh, Bruce Wayne as Batman. It would have made more sense, honestly, like if they went back to the comic that the movie inspired, or this movie was inspired by Flashpoint, because that had a different alternate version of Batman that was Thomas Wayne instead. And I honestly think it would have been a cool idea if you had Michael Keaton back, but instead of playing the same kind of Bruce Wayne Batman that he did in the '89 film, he could have played like an angrier, more violent Batman, like except that's played by Thomas Wayne. It would make sense because like Michael Keaton is the same age that Thomas Wayne would probably be if like he was still alive. It
Yeah,
would be kind
there
of like, and it could be a nice nod to that Michael Keaton Batman portrayal like decades ago. It would make a lot more sense than whatever they're trying to do here.
there's far more interesting things they could have done with the movie that they didn't because they didn't think of that. They were just like, how do we do this as inoffensively as possible? Because we've just been doing dud after dud. It's like, well, you do things as lamely as possible and hope that people are as coon-brained as possible to just clap and accept it all, which clearly they're not because nobody is falling for this shit.
Except maybe hardcore DC fans
Which
that
are like
are
a
terminally
small,
online.
which are a small minority, unfortunately. Like that's not enough
Yeah,
to make them
justify the box office or
exactly.
justify the
It's not enough.
budget.
It's not enough. Like it's you can't depend on people are not willing to do this shit anymore. Like it's we're they're sick and tired of it all, which is why they have to reboot it essentially because it's like we can't keep doing this over and over and over again. Like we can't just keep like at this point it's pathetic because it's been 10 years since Man of Steel and like every other movie afterwards. Like yeah, occasionally you get a Shazam and an Aquaman, but really the
Wonder
most
Woman was fine, I thought.
Wonder Woman was fine, but like it wasn't like gangbusters. Like I guess
It did well actually. I mean, it
box
did
office
much better
wise,
than the other movies, and like
sure, it did
people
much
liked it a lot more than
yes.
the other stuff. But like,
And then Wonder
yeah, I
Woman
mean, like that doesn't
1984
just
happened.
yeah, and then 1984 happened. It doesn't justify this whole DC universe continuing. They should
No.
have scrapped the whole thing with Batman v Superman.
I mean, they put so much time and effort that they thought they could salvage it. But like again, it's been a full decade at this point. Yeah, no wonder they're starting clean now. But I mean,
It should have. It should. What took them so long? Like they should have done that like years ago.
they weren't willing they thought it would make more sense to keep it going, I guess. Like I don't know, like but if they really wanted to have what Marvel had, they shouldn't have hired Zack Snyder. Now look, I think I
Or hired
respect
someone that had like a whole like vision for the universe. Because like yeah, they had Zack Snyder who was directing a lot of their movies, but they didn't have like a Kevin Feige. They kind of do
right.
now with James Gunn, but Zack Snyder
Yeah.
wasn't didn't seem like the whole like director or
Well,
CEO of DC.
cuz Zack Snyder is a filmmaker. He's not a businessman. Like he's somebody who has a vision, who wants to make the kinds of movies he wants to make. And I mean, I don't often like the movies he makes. Some of them are pretty fucking terrible, but like at least he has a vision. Like at least he understands what he wants. But that's not if you really want something to rival Marvel, you don't hire Snyder. Like that's why you get stuff like Man of Steel, BVS, and Zack Snyder's Justice League, which has their own fan base, which is fine. Like if you like those movies, great. Like there's things to appreciate in them. I will fully admit that there are things to appreciate in those movies and they're not completely worthless. Like I don't get anything out of them, but I understand people do. But
But
again,
they're not general audiences though.
no, not really. Like you can't really show a general audience member Man of Steel and expect them to like it on the same level as something like Iron Man or Captain America. Like
Because it's like another CGI nightmare where like the whole
yeah.
like the Krypton is like looks like some sci-fi box office flop that no one remembers, like Jupiter Ascending, and then the
Yeah.
whole like third act devolves into like two superhuman characters just smashing into each other. Like there's no tension there.
I mean, some people like that because they think it's smart because the movie does have aspects of it that it thinks are smart. It's not, but like if you truly like that stuff, fine. Again, that's totally fine. But yeah, that's not something you want on the same level as the MCU, and that's where DC completely just missed the boat on that. And
I'm not of the opinion that
that's
all
why we're here now.
superhero movies need to be fun. They're allowed to be serious, like A Dark Knight or even like the Batman recently. But
Well,
Like
serious doesn't
just getting
automatically
them.
mean not fun. Like
Yeah,
a movie can be serious and fun. Like The Dark Knight is serious and a fun movie. So is The Batman. What?
because you like those characters though. I
Yeah,
don't
you
like
like.
any of the characters in the DCEU movies.
No, the closest one is Shazam. Like the first Shazam movie is the only DCEU movie that like actually has characters I like, is a fun story, can be serious at times. Like it's the perfect amalgamation of everything that a DC movie should be. Shazam should not be the best DC movie in recent. It should not be the best DCEU movie because it would not be the best if these movies were actually trying. It would probably be on the lower side, but because the other movies are so terrible, it unfortunately is on the higher side. I like Shazam a lot actually, but I'm just
Yeah, I
saying
like
like
it too.
when you think of the kinds of movies that DC could be making, like their Dark Knights, their Supermans, their Batmans, like that Shazam is not that. It's just a good movie.
It's a
But
fun movie, but it's
but
not anything
unfortunately,
revolutionary.
of course, and unfortunately, that's as good as DC has gotten within this universe. Like, yes, you have your Jokers and your the
The
Batmans,
Batmans.
which are like actually good because well, they're
Those are
trying
more
to
successful than
yeah
their DCEU offerings.
yeah
So you would think
because
that if DC was smart enough, they'd just go that route instead of trying to go back to formula with Black Adam or Shazam 2, which are like flopping.
but they want that universe aspect because that's what the comics have always been about. Like that's what the comic books are, is like this like shared universe. Yes, you have like their own universes, like one-offs here and there as like their own thing, but like there is that shared comic universe, and that's why those comics are, that's why comics were so beloved for years, is because you have all these characters interacting with one another. Like it's a very cool idea, and they want that in movie form, but they're not very good at it, clearly.
Yeah, like that's one of the biggest missed opportunities with this movie is that with the amount of potential they have for a Flashpoint adaptation on the big screen, like they could have had like different alternate versions of the Justice League members that we knew before, like a different Wonder Woman and different Superman, which they did have with Supergirl or whatever. They could have had like a different Aquaman or a different Cyborg, but I guess they can't have Cyborg because the actor Ray Fisher said some nasty stuff about Warner Brothers and how they handled the making of Justice League, so they can't have him in this movie, I guess.
Yeah, God forbid. Ooh. They're so fucking petty. Oh, poor Ray Fisher. But then again, he's not in the DC universe anymore, so
At least
you
he's
know
not
what?
in the DC
I
universe
I
anymore.
I think good for him actually. He's out of there.
Yeah. Again, I think one of the things I remember we talked about is that with all of the amount of references and nostalgia they threw at the during the movie, they never made any reference to the Dark Knight trilogy. I'm glad they didn't, but it makes me
Yeah.
wonder if the DC if like the Flash if the filmmakers behind the Flash are so desperate for that No Way Home success, you would think that they would try to capitalize off of what is basically the most successful incarnation of Batman on the big screen.
Well, I heard that they approached Christian Bale several times and he just kept saying no, which is good. Like, so I think they did. I completely 100% believe they tried to like tie Nolan's Batman into this franchise, but because they couldn't get Christian Bale back, and they just couldn't figure out a way to do it properly, so they were just like, all right, this isn't worth it. But yeah, no, absolutely, like that probably would have been their number one thing, was to be like, oh, we got to tie this into the Dark Knight trilogy.
I heard the director wanted to put like Heath Ledger as the Joker in there, and like that would have been so
Yeah,
disrespectful.
yeah, exactly. Like again, like you're putting in all these characters played by iconic actors who are long gone. Like you have other options. Like you don't have to go with previously established characters. Like you can do other incarnations. Like I'm as stupid as it sounds, like I remember when people were like pissed at Multiverse of Madness for not including Tom Cruise's Iron Man variant, because it's like, yeah, Tom Cruise was originally going to play Iron Man in the MCU, and it's like, look, That's
He would have never
stupid.
signed on for
He
that.
would have never in a million years signed on for that. But that's something that would be cool to see in these kinds of multiverse movies, which is why I like the idea of Nicolas Cage Superman being here. It's like, if you're going to do this quote unquote multiverse, like, do something like that, or do entirely different characters. Like, just hire some random actor and just put him in the role as like a joke. It's like, you can do that. Like, there's so much potential to a multiverse nostalgia baity movie, and they go with the same shit over and over, and it's like, okay, well, yeah, no wonder this doesn't work, because you're so limited in what you're trying to do. It's it's embarrassing. But yeah, I'm also glad that the Nolan trilogy didn't come up in this multiverse. It's like, great, it's untouched.
I still believe that the other Flash Barry Allen featured in the movie had more screen time than both Michael Keaton's Batman and the Supergirl that was in this. And I think I don't know if this was like the movie's intention, but I guess like if it wasn't bad enough that the movie had to have one criminal in it, but two of them now, and the one that they feature as like you know as kind of the counterpart or sidekick to Barry is so much more annoying than he was in the other movies. Like there was like a part in it where like he's running around town and is naked, and like is this really like the humor that this movie's going to devolve into? It's embarrassing.
Yeah, I can see what they're going for, because he's the inexperienced Flash and he causes a ruckus. But like, they don't do that in the most interesting way possible. They just make him destroy things and people get hurt. And it's like, oh, haha, it's Ezra Miller. Get it? um, so it's unfortunate in that way. But like, yeah, that's the thing with this movie is like, okay, I can see what you're doing. And it would be a lot more interesting if this was a better written movie, but it's not. It's just bad. Like, it feels like just cobbled together just cuz. Like, because they're just like, oh, we have to set it up in a way that like we can go moving forward, we can like, reset the DC universe, we're trying to fix things. In a way, I can kind of see like this being like DC being semi self-aware with the fact that they're just, because the whole idea of the latter half of the movie, when like, the Flash keeps trying to go back and trying to save Michael Keaton and Supergirl, and he's like, I keep trying and trying, but I just can't fix this. It's like, well, is that the DC universe like being kind of self-aware at the point that it's like, you keep trying to attempt to fix this universe but you just can't, and so that's why they abandon it at the end? It's like, again, that would be really profound if the movie was better written, but it's not.
Honestly, one of the most another disappointing aspect of this movie, which is a word I never in a million years would say about the Flash movie of all things, because as much as I wanted a good Flash movie, I knew I wasn't gonna get one. But even when the way they portrayed Zod in the movie as like because one of the yeah, again, like I remember you said on your podcast that one of the things you liked about Man of Steel was Michael Shannon as Zod, because like he kind of works as a pretty intimidating but also pretty menacing like antagonist, who's kind of like who works he's a more angered like sort of enemy to Superman, and I think that works as basic as kind of like a conflict in the movie, as
He's a
like
character, yeah.
he is a character, exactly is what I'm saying. He's not a character in this movie because he just kind of stands around, and when Supergirl just kind of comes up to him, he just stabs her. Like,
Yeah.
I as much I never would have thought I'd say this, but that whole climax in Man of Steel, that's kind of a miserable CGI nightmare of characters just smashing into each other. I wanted just a little bit more of that in this movie, just a little bit more of that, because like there
Yeah.
wasn't much of anything going on in that climax. They
No,
were
because
all just in a desert or whatever, and
it's
like
a desert, so now like, oh, so now you can't complain that these characters are killing innocent civilians. It's like, okay, like, the reason
he
we
did that
didn't
in
like that.
BVS. Zack Snyder did.
Yeah, again, the reason nobody liked, or the reason not many people liked that about Man of Steel and BVS, was because you were attaching the characters like Superman and Batman, who are not those kinds of destructive characters. Like, That's not what they're about. And look, you can certainly try that, and they did, and they failed because they didn't do it right. Like, they just made it miserable. Like, that's why people didn't like that. That doesn't mean like, oh, we have to have these gigantic climax battles in an open field where nothing happens so then no innocent people get hurt. It's like, no, that's lame. Like, sometimes it can be cool, but like, it's too transparent. I get why they're doing it. They're trying not to be like controversial, but it's like, okay, but now you're boring. Like, I'd rather you be controversial, because A Man of Steel is a much more interesting movie than this, because it actually tried something. It failed, but it tried.
I say this movie was a bit controversial, but not for the right reasons. But
No, it's controversial because of the main actor. Like, if Ezra Miller was not a controversial person, like this movie, the exact movie, people would just be bored by it. They're just like, because like you judge the movie on its own, it's just boring. Like, there's nothing to it. Like, the reason
there isn't really.
It's so controversial. The only reason it is controversial is because of Ezra Miller. Like,
but there's also some batshit insane stuff that happens in it too. I'm gonna say it now. I like this movie more than the Little Mermaid remake because I would rather watch a movie with anything of substance, even if that substance is absolute like dog shit.
Yeah.
Rather than just a plain, boring, dull experience.
Yeah, there was nothing to the Little Mermaid remake. Like, even more nothing. Like, at least with here, like, yes, it's boring, but at least it has the baby in the microwave scene. Like,
and it has that cynical corporate montage at the end, shoving a bunch of CGI versions of deceased actors.
Yeah, like, that is more fascinating to me than the Little Mermaid, which is just the same movie but more boring. Like,
and bad. And
no, I agree. Like, yeah, I would sooner rewatch The Flash over the Little Mermaid remake.
Yeah. Do you want to just talk about the ending to this movie where like they just show up, where just George Clooney shows up out of a limousine? And
yeah, so I like the idea of bringing back George Clooney as a haha, isn't this funny? But again, he's just George Clooney. Like, they don't have him in the bat suit. They don't have him, like, I would have loved if he'd like whipped out a bat credit card, like something. Like,
yes,
anything.
I would have loved that. Please,
like,
that would have been so funny.
It's just George Clooney. Like, that's the joke. It's just like, oh, George Clooney. So like, nobody in the audience is gonna be like, oh, haha, Batman and Robin reference. They're just like, oh, it's George Clooney as Bruce Wayne. Like, whatever.
They didn't have the balls. If it's just for a tiny second that he pulled out a credit card of his and it was the Bat credit card, I would have cried tears of joy. I would have that would have been so amazing.
Anything.
But
like,
no,
if you're going to have him, like, take full advantage of having him. It's like, no, it's like, hey, Barry, it's me, Bruce. He's like, but you're not Bruce. And then that's it. Like, that's all they do with it.
And his tooth falls off.
And then his tooth falls out, which
I think it's a bad CGI tooth that falls off.
It's a really good, I will admit, it's a very good ending for
way
DCEU.
to end the DCEU.
How he just,
like,
like,
embarrassing.
It's an embarrassing. Yeah, his tooth falls out. He smiles. It's like, that's so embarrassing that it is the perfect.
It's such a fitting ending.
It's such a fitting ending for the DCEU. Yes, that one shot, or the last shot being the after credit scene where drunk Aquaman is like lying in a puddle. Like, either or works as like the final shot of the DCEU. It's pretty funny.
Yeah. I remember watching this review like over a month ago by this point, where they said that the audience went insane at the very ending, where like George Clooney showed up at the end. They didn't spoil what happened at the end. They just said that the ending of this movie had the audience out of their minds, and I'm still like puzzled by what was the insane reaction over just like the fact that George Clooney showed up in another DC movie after Batman and Robin. Like, yeah. I don't understand it. I don't understand any of the positive reactions to this movie from real celebrities from months ago, like Tom Cruise, Stephen King, Terry Crews. Did we see the same movie? I can understand these reactions if they were for Across the Spider-Verse, but not the Flash of all movies. Like,
yeah, it has to be.
This has to be fake news.
it's either they didn't actually pay attention to the movie, like they were just kind of like, oh yeah, it was good, like whatever, like, and then they just had like their interns or whatever like write something out. Like I don't know. I genuinely don't know what it is. I don't want to necessarily say they were like bought out because I don't know. I don't think DC. I
Because
don't
Warner
think
Brothers
DC
doesn't have any more money left to pay
yeah,
any
yeah.
celebrities.
They would have to have like infinite money in order for that to happen, considering what like how bad this movie is. Like I don't know. Maybe just some people just watch a movie and they were like they just don't understand like what it actually is, so they're just like whatever, like this is I had a good time. Like it's like, just an average person just like going to the movies being like never watching anything else and just being like, "Oh yeah, it was good." And then like never watch it again. Like that's probably what it is,
It
honestly.
probably is. It's that's a fair point. Uh, yeah, this movie. It. I honestly like. I should be. Like I should be completely like apathetic to the fact that this movie turned out the way it did. But I'm still, even though I wasn't disappointed necessarily, I can't help but be a little bit let down by just the amount of wasted potential it had. But again, the amount of wasted potential that a lot of these big budget DC movies, throw in the garbage or just completely waste, is no surprise at this point.
No.
Since DC has just been sucking for decades.
Yeah, no. This is not something where they're pushing the director's vision of something. Like, this isn't but like, I'm not saying I'm entirely off of DC at this point. Like I still want to see the Batman with from Matt Reeves. I still want to see the second Joker movie just to cuz I'm very curious to see what they actually do with that, if they do anything at all, really. And I am interested in seeing James Gunn take on Superman. Like
Oh, I'm interested in that too.
but those I want to see because they sound interesting. Whereas, like, you know, I'm not entirely convinced that, like, I'm not entirely convinced into seeing like other DC movies just because they're DC. Because it's like they're clearly not putting it out there for the sake of wanting to show this hero's journey or this hero's story. Like they're just doing it because it's like, oh, what other characters do we have left? It's like that's what the past decade of DC has been like. Just like, oh, we have to do this. It's like, well, you don't have to. Like Matt Reeves didn't make the Batman because he had to. He made it because he wanted to. Like that's why that movie works. That's why we like that movie.
Yeah, I
It
mean, it was a studio greenlit movie, but it was also one with a director who put
yeah,
passion into it.
exactly. So I want to see more stuff like that. And you know what?
I'm hoping
You,
Superman Legacy does turn out like that because James Gunn is a good director. I think he makes interesting stuff, and
sure.
I think he has a love for a lot of these comic book characters, and that's why I think he is a fitting person to head the whole DC universe, the
Yeah.
hopefully not dog shit one.
I mean, who knows? Even if it's not any good, like I don't really give a shit. Like it's going to be what it's going to be. Like if it looks interesting, I'll watch it. If it doesn't, I probably won't. But that's just I we have no idea, so we'll just have to wait and see, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the most fascinating outcomes of this movie is how much money it's going to lose for Warner Brothers. So if I'm not mistaken, it's going to lose $200 million.
Yeah, that's a lot
Uh,
of money.
yeah.
Which
And I think that its domestic run is going to end up lower than Green Lantern, the Ryan Reynolds one.
yeah, yeah. No, this
That's
was
embarrassing.
yeah, this was not this was not well thought out, this leaving this movie. And look, I'm not saying like they should have canceled it and should have let Batgirl go. It's like no, like I don't think either movie should be canceled. I think if you make a movie, put it out there no matter how bad it is. Like I want to see it. Like that's why I go to the movies. I want to see what happens in a movie because sometimes I get something out of that, whether good things or bad things. It's like I never want a movie to be canceled. So
No movie deserves to be canceled.
no, of course not.
Unless it's like far into development and hasn't started shooting yet, and maybe they think it's not such a good idea. But if it's already like completely shot, then what's the point in just throwing it all in the garbage?
Yeah, no, and I get it for tax reasons, but like, I'm sure there's some money to be made. I don't know. I'm not a businessman. I don't know business. I don't know money, so I could be talking completely out of my ass with that. But like, I don't know. There has to be some sort of way to just like you can't just leave it all there and like not expect people you can't expect people to be like, oh yeah, we'll just never be curious about this again. Like people are going to want that Batgirl movie completed for years to come. Like mark my words.
Hmm. Oh, I think it definitely will see the light of day. I think if the Snyder cut could see the light of day,
You know what? That's a good point.
when it wasn't even like a thing that the studio or Warner Brothers ever conceived, which is something that a bunch of petty online fans demanded. Like anything can happen.
That's true. That's true. The Snyder cut can happen. Anything can happen. I mean, let's be real.
That should be a T-shirt. If the Snyder cut can happen, anything can happen.
Exactly. Yeah.
If they can invest money into the garbage visual effects in the Flash movie, they can invest money into anything really, like actually worthwhile.
Yeah.
And that's because and I hate how the director himself actually like insulted the audience by saying, "Well, actually, the visual effects they look the way they did because the Flash, the way he go, the way he like whenever he's moving fast and the world starts to slow down around him, that's the reason why the effects look so disintegrated. Then how come the effects in the desert and like the effects from like the Batman or Michael Keaton Batman when he's punching people. How come the effects in the montage at the end when all the superheroes like the deceased actors that were CGI'd in there, how come those effects look bad?
I mean, he was kind of caught between a rock and a hard place with that. It's like I don't think you're gonna make the movie and then be like, oh yeah, the effects suck. Like it is what it is. Like you could never get away with saying shit like that. Like I mean, maybe down the line you could, but like nowadays it's like no. If you're asked about that kind of stuff, and you kind of have to bullshit your way through it, unfortunately. So,
In a
like
few years, he'll say, actually, the visual effects sucked because they sucked.
they sucked because I was given this movie
Because
because
I was paid to make this
I
movie.
was paid to make this movie. They gave me no budget because they're a bunch of penny pinching assholes and they demanded all this stuff and I worked with what I had, unfortunately.
At least you would be honest about it.
Yeah,
Anything else you have to say about it?
no, it's the Flash. Like
We've already talked about it. We have just already talked about it,
yeah,
but
people need. I'm sure people understand. Like it's the Flash. Like it is what it is.
it is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, the next movie that I guess we can talk about that also came out the same day, but did not have a baby inside a microwave, but it did have a bunch of people on fire though. It's Elemental,
It had
the
Claude.
new Pixar. I had Claude as well, the most epic fictional character conceived.
Exactly.
This movie had an abysmal opening, less than 30 million. It's been catching on because of good audience reception, I guess. So it's got that going for it. I think today actually, I looked into this. It's now surpassed The Flash at the domestic box office, despite only opening at number two behind it on opening weekend. But this isn't a box office hour. It's it's we're talking about the movie. It's Elemental. It's
Mm-hmm.
what'd you think of it?
Uh, it's fine. It's
It
yeah.
was
I
a
mean,
movie.
it's better than the Flash. But that's such
That's
a
not
high
saying
bar.
much.
Yeah. Like, look, in terms of Pixar's outcomes over the last couple of years, I think this is one of the better ones. But that's not saying much. Like, I think it's fine for what it is. It's
You
not
haven't actually talked about any of their Pixar's 2020s output, I think, on your channel. You've talked
not
about it on
much. Yes.
Letterboxd and Discord, but like you've never actually given your thoughts on like video form.
Yeah, no, I definitely need to do that more often. I definitely need to talk more about Pixar on my own podcast for sure. But like, yeah, no. I mean, it's not a terrible movie by any means. It's fine. Like people are going to love it, people are going to dislike it. Like I'm somewhere in the middle. I understand what works and what doesn't work about it. and I'm just left being in the middle. It's like, yeah, I can see what works, I can see what's good about it, but none of it really comes together in the end for me to really praise it as something that great.
How would you say this movie, like, what movies would you say from Pixar this is better than, I guess, this decade? Would you say this is
Um,
better than, like, Onward or Luca? I think you said it
yeah,
was better than Luca, but
it's better than Luca. I think I have Onward rated higher than this, but I probably would rather watch this over Onward because Onward I liked at first, but I feel like because I kind of just I didn't really think about it that critically when I first watched it, or I didn't have as much of a critical eye as I do now. Like I had somewhat of a critical eye, but I feel like I've kind of evolved that over the years. So I feel like I'd be
your
a lot
taste has
more.
evolved.
Yeah, I feel like I'd be a little more critical of that movie. So yeah, I would say I think I prefer Elemental over Onward. Honestly, thinking
I
about
think
it.
this is one of their weaker offerings, I'd say, because, like, it feels a bit more cliched than a lot of their recent movies. I'd say Luca is a bit cliched, but I also say it's more simple on purpose than this movie, which I feel like this movie's too simple though. Like it's uh too much of what we've seen before,
Yeah,
but it doesn't really have like a hook to it to where I think like it has
I mean
some
it's
a different interesting personality, I guess.
I mean
It's got
it's
stuff I
hook
like in it.
its hook is that of what a Pixar movie usually does. It's like, oh, what if this thing had feelings, and that's it. Like that's the hook of it. Is like, oh, it's a city, but it's a bunch of fire people and a bunch of water people. It's like, okay, that's neat for like a short film, but we're watching this for like an hour and 40 minutes, unfortunately.
I didn't think it was like as focused on that as as I thought it would be focused on that, like, based on the trailers, because that was the
That is
whole
true.
selling point in the marketing. I actually thought that the opening sequence of it, of like of like Ember's parents like traveling to Element City and the whole like immigration aspect, and like you kind of saw a bit of how like the city works, and like the immigrants, the people like of other elements like immigrating to the city, like the air people and the water residents. I thought that was interesting. I thought that was like the most interesting aspect of the movie was that opening sequence, and that feels like a good. It would make for a good short film, I think. When he's like opening up the shop and like Ember's like a young baby, it was fairly interesting. Again, it's like a good Pixar short film. It's just like
Yeah.
they kind of had to stretch it out into an actual story.
Yeah, no, it looks good animation wise, duh. And
No, no shit.
yeah, no, and it looks, and I agree. Like it is an interesting idea for a short film. Though it's just like, oh, these different elements are coming together to make this big city, and it's like, yeah, that's fine, but like, I don't know. I feel like it doesn't really do that in an interesting way. Like it's doing so in a way that a Pixar movie would, and that's kind of what's holding it back for me. It's like, yeah, I can see what it's doing. It's like, oh, all these different elements are coming together. It's like our world, where it's just like, okay, I guess it's kind of stupid if you really think about it, though. You know?
I think, yeah. I mean, like that whole like element city aspect, like it looked really bland from the trailers. That teaser especially, like that teaser looked really bad. Like it was just like a behind shot of like Ember for most of
Mm-hmm.
it, and she was going on the subway. It showed a bunch of the residents from the city, and it gave me Illumination vibes, like the jokes in it and the
Yeah.
music. It looked really bad from that. The movie
Yeah.
is nowhere near as bad as it looked from the
No,
marketing. It's
definitely
like
not.
I would say I like this movie. I don't think it's amazing. It's not a classic or anything. It's like a fun little. It's a cute movie to put on if you have nothing else to put on. If I had kids who wanted to see this movie, I'd say, oh, sure, all right.
Yeah, that's fine. It's inoffensive. It's yeah, that's what I said. Like it's inoffensive. It's a fine movie. Like I can't say this is like offensively bad. I can't say like this is the worst thing Pixar's ever made. It's nowhere near that. But like I just don't think it's doing anything spectacular. Like I'm not coming to, I'm not going to praise something when it doesn't really do anything worth praising. Like that's,
Or it doesn't, or it's not as bad as you would have thought it
yeah,
would
it's
be.
like, oh, it's like, okay, cool. You're not as bad as I would have thought. Like, but you're not going beyond that. Like, it's just stopping at just okay. It's like, okay, why am I here then? Like, why should I be complimenting you when you're doing the bare minimum?
I'd say I guess one of the things I did appreciate was the romance aspect. I thought was kind of cute, but
Yeah, I agree.
it was I like that part of it. We don't see a lot of those in like these kinds of Disney Pixar tentpoles.
I
Maybe
like.
it's because I'm a sucker for romances, but I don't know.
I
It
mean,
was it was it was interesting.
I like when romances are, actually good. And yeah, no, I like when this movie is just like the two characters, like just interacting in the city. I think that's cool. But then once they start talking and, then they have like the third act breakup, that's when I'm like,
Yeah,
okay, like clearly you're not interested in telling an interesting story. You're like just making something because the studio wanted you to make it. It's like, well then, like that's lame. Like I don't know. And the third act breakup is so forced. It's just like, dude, like
that felt like obligatory
yeah,
because like most
obligatory.
even like a lot of these like because like some of these like recent like movies that have like these kinds of third act breakups, sometimes it feels pretty justified when it comes to the narrative. It feels like in this case like it didn't really need to happen though. Like
No.
they like just started fighting with each other because the main character Ember was is not really allowed to interact with water people, but like it's not reason to get mad at him though, and he just gets mad at her. It didn't feel natural though. It felt just like kind of a check on the box, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
Which I'm
no.
sure like this movie had, I'm sure like the director behind this was definitely passionate about it because like it is a pretty personal story for him, but
Sure.
it needed a bit more meat to its bones,
Well,
I'd
that's the
say.
thing with recent Pixar. It's like, yeah, I can kind of see why like a lot of these stories are called personal, but like then I actually see the movie and I'm like, okay, I don't feel this personal story being told. I feel like maybe on like the surface, like you get like little details of like, oh, this looks like this looks like that, like this is what I grew up with, this is what I grew up with. It's like, okay, great, but then underneath that's like personal surface is like this cliched story that we've seen over and over and over again, and it's like, okay, that's not interesting. Like I want something new, like actually new, not just like something we've seen before but with a different coat of paint. It's like, give me something actually new and then I'll start praising the hell out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, like the animation, it's well done.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. I guess even though it just looks like another traditional Pixar movie, I guess it's conceptually ambitious that they're using like effects animation to personify like characters on screen.
Yeah, of course.
But I'd also say that looking at what all these other studios are putting out, they're trying more art styles and different visual. They have more visual personality. I'd say these other studios are creating right now. I'm not going to compare this movie to Across the Spider Verse because that would be cruel, but I'm just going to say that the fact that movie came out the same month that this movie did not do it any favors.
I mean, look, like we're living in the era where like the fucking Paw Patrol movie is getting great animation. It's like, look, animated movies nowadays are going to look amazing because the studios have the technology to make something look great. So I don't really like complimenting a movie as
For
just
the
having,
animation,
yeah, for the
unless
animation.
it
It's like,
looks new.
yeah, it's like no shit. Like again, I saw a trailer for the Paw Patrol movie before Elemental. It's like, yeah, the animation in that movie looks great. The movie's probably going to suck because it's a fucking Paw Patrol movie. Like give
It's
me
for
something.
babies.
Yeah, exactly. You're on the like Paw Patrol is caught up to Pixar now. It's like great. Now Pixar has to evolve even further with that, as well as all these other movie studios. It's like, yeah, okay, your animation looks great. Evolve that. Like evolve these movies to actually have an interesting story and interesting characters. But I guess that's asking way too much. But again, Across the Spider-Verse did that just fine.
I'd say that in terms of just like recent like Pixar movies that had were visually a little different. I'd say Luca and like Turning Red. They weren't like the Spider Verse approach. They weren't like the Puss in Boots: The Last Wish approach. But like they looked visually interesting in terms of like
Yeah,
color palette and like more expressive animation and character movements.
yeah. Again,
I appreciate Turning Red more actually because I really like that movie, but because like it feels like a bit more like it's just pushing the envelope in terms of like humor. I think a bit more than most of Pixar's recent movies. That's why I appreciate it more than like a lot of their recent stuff, especially.
I
But
suppose,
yeah,
yeah, it's pushing the envelope in humor and in animation, I guess. Like, yeah, that's great, but it's not pushing the envelope in the story department. And that's the same thing with Elemental. Like, I can see, again, like I said, I can see why this is a personal story, quote unquote, but I'm not feeling that personal story in the story department. Like, the actual writing, like, the actual, like, screenwriting and how you're directing these scenes. It's like, none of this feels personal. It all feels factory made. Just with a stamp on the very corner of the poster that says like, "Oh, this is a personal story." It's like, great, great, interesting. I guess not.
that's always the weird thing about making a story under a kind of studio umbrella is that it's always gonna be going through the studio process, and it's gonna come out, and you're gonna kind of think, well, this wasn't really what I wanted it to be. It's probably a lot of it's probably some directors are thinking to themselves when they're making these types of movies, unless they're given like complete creative control, like a Zack Snyder or something like that. But also probably turns out like a complete disaster.
Yeah, look, again, like, I mean, we get the Sonic movies, which are also like studio mandated schlock, but like I feel as though the filmmakers are actually taking advantage of the cliches they're given in those movies. Whereas like like Elemental, I'm not getting that. I'm just getting, oh, we kind of have to put this in there. We're not going to touch it because we don't really need to. It's like whatever. It's like no, like do something with those cliches. Like if you're going to have them in the movie, do something interesting with those. It's like no, whatever. Just third act breakup. They hate each other now just cuz. It's like okay, like
Does this movie make you laugh at all?
uh sometimes I can't really think of any specifics. I mean, I guess I was laughing at just Claude's existence because I'm like, oh god, they're actually trying to make this character happen. Like
It
in
was He
that
wasn't in it
sense,
as much as I thought it would be actually,
I
which
mean,
I'm
good.
thankful for.
I guess, yeah. But again, like, why include him anyway? If you can just cut out all his scenes, like, what was the point of him?
So I'd say you said that you enjoy this movie more than any of their recent movies, right?
I relatively, I guess. Again, like, I can't really say this is like a huge improvement over anything. Like, it's not really much of an improvement. I just can't say this movie was like bad in any significant way. It was just fine. So like I just leave it at that.
Mm-hmm. Uh, I'd say that yeah, I liked it. I'd say it's a good time for me. I had a good time watching it. I'd say it's not something I'd probably put it in this. This is probably gonna give me a lot of flack, but I'd probably put it in the same like ballpark as Nimona, where like that had really good animation, more unique animation. But I'd say that the story and like characters were just kind of what I've seen before.
Yeah,
But I'm
that's why
able
I
to have
haven't seen
fun with
Nimona
it.
yet.
I'm able to have fun with it, but I can't really say like this was a new frontier for animation or anything.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's like okay, again, as I was saying, like yeah, no shit, an animated movie is gonna have great animation. Like I'm glad that all these movies have great animation. Like, but the only reason I praise something like the Spider Verse movies is because not only do those have amazing animation, but they also have great characters and a really engaging story. So then I'm never bored. I can't say that.
They also look visually different from other stuff recently. Even
Yeah,
like the ones that do take advantage of the stylized approach.
yeah, again, like that's all I'm asking. Like I just want something engaging. I don't want the cliches to overshadow everything else. Is what I'm saying. Like if if the movie, because like yes, even the Spider-Verse movies have those semi cliches to them, but they take advantage of those. Like that's why I like those movies. Like it's not just because the animation is pretty. Like there's so many things I love about the Spider-Verse movies that keeps me returning to them over and over again. There's a reason I went and saw Spider-Verse again in theaters like a couple weeks ago, because I genuinely really wanted to see it again, and it was even better on rewatch. So like,
I've seen Across the Spider Verse 3 times in theaters,
yeah, because it's a
twice on
genuinely
premium
good
formats.
movie. It's a genuinely good movie. It doesn't like, it's not just because of the animation. Like it's a genuinely well put together film that feels like an evolution of not only its previous installment, but also just like an evolution in storytelling, I would say. Like there's just so many good things to it. And then you watch Elemental and you're just like, oh, it's
Okay.
fine. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, sure,
Like,
why not?
yeah, sure, why not? Like, yeah,
Did it make you cry?
no. Oh my god. Well, if we're talking about scenes that made me laugh, how about the scene where Ember accidentally kills Wade for like a couple of seconds? Like, I thought I didn't know
Which
what.
scene was that again? I don't remember.
Well, the very end where like Wade is gone and the characters are
Oh,
sad
right,
and
yeah.
it's just like, oh, he's dead, and me being me, I'm like, he evaporated. Like he's not dead. Like that's not how that works. Like he's water. He just evaporated. And then it's like, and then he starts like crying to like rain down from like the stone. It's just like, oh yeah, again, hello. Like, do you assume kids are that stupid where they don't understand evaporation? I don't know, maybe very very little kids, but like I don't know, like what are we doing here? Like what, I don't know. It was just so, and it was also just really funny because it's just like, oh, you're gonna kill the main character because the other main character like steamed him to death. Like that just sounded so bafflingly absurd to put in a Pixar movie, but they didn't go with that. They just had him to come back. He actually didn't die. It's like, oh, okay.
Death fake out.
Yeah, the fake out. It's just like, ah, for crying out loud, man. It's so forced.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I mean,
I did
I
not cry. There was nothing in this movie that made me cry.
even though I can't really say I'm very passionate about this movie, I did see it in theaters twice though, which I don't see for movies that I'd rate any lower than a seven usually. But
Mm-hmm.
the first time I did see this, there were some annoying teenagers a couple rows behind me that were making like obnoxious comments like during like the last third of the movie.
Mm.
So I did see it with another crowd like on a Tuesday evening, and it says a lot when like the kids in the audience are more respectful than the quote unquote adults that were behind me a couple rows on the first screening I saw this movie at.
Mm. I mean, sometimes kids are just bored at movie theaters. Like they're just, because they're being dragged there by their parents. They're just like, ugh, this. Why am I here when I could be playing like Fortnite at home or something? But I
Yeah.
mean, no, there are some respectful children out there, absolutely, because like not every kid is the same. I know I just stereotyped the children, but like not every child is the same.
I went to see Across the Spider Verse for a third time, and there were some like very kind of annoying people in the theater, and I thought for a movie as good as Across the Spider Verse, maybe there wouldn't be like any like talkative people in the theater, but it's I guess not.
No, because those are general audience members who just don't give a shit about what movie they're seeing. They're just like, oh, let's go to the movies and watch whatever's playing, and they'll just watch it without
We'll just
really
talk
thinking
during
about
it.
it. Yeah, exactly. And it's like, okay, why are you going? Like, this is why I don't like idolizing the theater experience, because especially when if it's something like an art house theater, or like a theater that's actually open that wants to show movies, like that's fine. But if it's like an AMC or a Cinemark that's clearly marketing itself for everybody to go see movies at, it's like, yeah, you're
I
not gonna
agree with
get
that.
you're not gonna get like this amazing experience. You're gonna get people like talking loudly because they don't understand that like the world doesn't revolve around them.
It's usually not as bad when like there's more people in the theater, and it seems like the people that are there, realize that there's actual people watching it, and so they're
Yeah.
not completely aloof.
Look, I'm fine with talking over movies. I do that a lot, but I do that in the privacy of my own home where like I'm riffing on a movie because I think it's funny to do. But like if I'm going to a movie theater, I'm there to be respectful because I'm in public. Like I'm not going to talk over the movie. I'm not going to be on my phone. I'm going to watch the movie and be respectful to the other people that are going there cuz that's what you do. If you're just going to go to the movie theater to talk over it, like don't waste your money. Just wait until the movie's out on streaming. Like that's
Or watch a cam rip of it at home.
or watch a camera. I don't know. Like I'm not your parents. Not in charge of you. Like do whatever, I guess, but like if it hinders like somebody else's experience at the movies, then just don't do it.
Then stop pretending you actually care about movies and don't go to the movies.
Yeah, as harsh and gatekeepy as that sounds, it's true. Like why are you doing this if you're just wasting everybody else's time, especially your time? It's I don't
Yeah.
get some people.
Me neither. Did you think that Ember was kind of thirsty for Wade?
uh I didn't get that from the movie. I thought she was just kind of indifferent to him, and then once she got to know him, it's like, oh, okay, yeah,
Hmm. Did you think the fire girl was kind of hot?
no, I'm not,
Oh
I'm not,
no,
I'm not.
that's factual. She is hot because that's her
Oh,
element.
I get it. I thought you were being like William and asking me if I found the character conventionally attractive. It's like, yeah, no, fire's not my thing. Like none of these characters look conventionally attractive. They're just like water people and fire people. Like there's really not
Yeah.
much to that.
Flame
uh
Princess isn't your thing, huh?
no, Flame Princess. Oh, Adventure Time. I've never actually watched Adventure Time all the way through, so
I haven't watched it in years to be honest, but like I've watched those earlier seasons almost religiously when I was
mm.
a younger kid.
I mean, I've seen some episodes sometimes and I remember liking it, but other times I don't really remember that much of anything, but yeah, I mean, I grew up in the generation that loves that show, so I'm very much aware of Adventure Time. I just never really watched it.
Mm, fair.
Yeah.
I was gonna say in my letterbox review, one of the letterbox reviews that I wrote, that if I like this movie less than the Mario movie, I was gonna say if I had a nickel for every time that I liked an Illumination movie over a Pixar movie on a certain year, I'd have two nickels, which isn't much, but it's weird that it happened two times. I would have
Mm.
said that, but that's actually kind of true. This is the second year in a row where I've liked an Illumination movie more than a Pixar one, even though two Pixar movies came out last year and I liked one of them more than the Illumination movie.
Oh, so you're
Uh,
saying you liked Rise of Gru over Lightyear? Okay,
yeah,
that's where you were
I
going with
mean
that.
that's not saying much though, because
No,
I did not like
because
that movie.
oh god, yeah, no, Lightyear was fucking abysmal. Ugh. Yeah,
I'm glad
yeah.
we've all forgotten about it.
Obviously, when it comes to this current state of Pixar, Elemental is way better than something like Lightyear. Obviously, but yeah, no, I think I'm with you. I think I liked the Super Mario Brothers movie more than this. Honestly,
Yeah, I mean, I'd say like the whole third act breakup thing in that movie was less about like the characters getting angry at each other, but it felt natural to what was happening,
yeah, it
which
was
I appreciated.
circumstance. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
like the more Mario movie, it's like it's not a masterpiece by any means or stretch
It's
of the
fine.
imagination.
Yeah,
I think it's a good movie though. I think it's
yeah.
like a thinly plotted movie, but a fun one nevertheless that
I
I'd
think
watch
at
again.
worst, it's just it's on the same level as Elemental, where it's just inoffensive and like nothing really happens that could like be borderline terrible. I just can't say it's like anything that great. But like I don't know, I feel like I just have more of an attachment to Mario than I do Elements, so I just prefer the Mario movie a little more.
The only attachment I've had to Elements is Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yeah, exactly. Like Avatar is like, yeah, that's taking these concepts of like earth, wind, water, fire, and like, doing something
Go
really
Planet.
unique with them. Planet, Captain Planet. Yeah, no. Avatar: The Last Airbender is like a very good example of like how you take these concepts and actually like do something interesting with them for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's another issue I have with this movie because like I know it probably sounds like I'm criticizing this movie, but I do like it fine enough.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but I guess like another issue I've had with it, and this goes for another movie like Zootopia, where like they try to like make it kind of a racial metaphor, the whole
Yeah.
movie, and like, but like they're because they're personifying like either animals or elements in these types of movies, but it's not really the same thing as like human racism, like
Yeah.
the natural world kind of pits a lot of these things against each other, so there's
Look, I'm not gonna. I know, like, nobody really wants to hear the white guy's opinion on racism portrayed in kids' movies, but it's just like, I don't know, like, the way they do it in Zootopia and in Elemental, they're just like, like, oh, we're the fire people, and they are racist against us because we're fire and they're water or earth or something. It's like, okay, that's not the same thing. Like racism is just like stupid in real life because it's just skin color. Like that is the big difference. It's just skin color. When it comes to like animals in Zootopia, it's just like, oh, the predators. We're racist against predators because they're big. They have sharp teeth. They used to stalk us. It's just like, uh, you do realize you're equating that to real life minorities, like, uh, what the fuck, Zootopia? What are you implying here by equating like minorities to that of predators? And then in here, they're just like, yeah, nobody likes fire. It's like, yeah, of course nobody likes fire because fire sets things on fire and destroys things. Are you implying that that's what Korean people do? Like, I get it. It's a metaphor, but like, and this is something that a good friend of mine, Jess, Lavender Whale, fellow Shea Phyllis editor, said in their review. She's just like, I thought like metaphors are supposed to, make things easier to understand. It's like, yeah, where are you going with this metaphor on racism with the elements? Like, it just doesn't fit, you know?
doesn't really. I did appreciate how like the I don't think the racism aspect of this was as prevalent as it was in Zootopia.
No.
It was just more of like it wasn't like the whole prejudice aspect wasn't as much of a focus as it just was the romance and like wondering if we should be together or not or whatever. Like
Yeah.
that like
You
again like it's like but it's still something that the movie does make you question though, which it only makes it more confusing.
you get a character occasionally being like, "Go back to Fireland." It's like, okay, and that's the extent of your racism. It's like, okay, but again, fire is notoriously dangerous. Like, I guess it's kind of clever that like, oh, this is Element City, but like not all of Element City is made for fire people. But okay, like, I guess that's kind of a clever metaphor because it's like, oh, our current city systems aren't necessarily meant for everybody, but like, I don't know, that's more of like a class thing more so than a race thing. So like, what are you like? It just feels way too confused in what it's trying to tackle. Like, I understand what it's trying to tackle. Hey, racism is bad. It's like, yeah, I can get behind that. Like, of course, but I don't know, like, it's just way too confused for me to really like claim as it's really just too confused. Like, that's just the short of it. It's way too confused.
The humor in this movie, I think, is fine overall. I'd say it's a bit. Did you think that the humor was a bit more kid oriented than like most of their movies? You would
I
say.
mean, it's always kid oriented, like,
Yeah, but there's always going to be some of those jokes in like some of those older Pixar movies,
yeah, because
especially like one of my favorite jokes in The Incredibles is like when Syndrome says, "Looks like Elastigirl and Mr. Incredible got busy."
yeah, there's like that scene at the end where like Grandpa Fire is just like, oh, we have more time for hanky panky. It's like, oh, haha, he said hanky panky in a kids movie. Like, I guess that's shocking. I don't really see the humor in that other than it just being there for shock. Like, but like, yeah, no, I mean, the rest of the humor is just puns, really. Like, you got the sports team that's called the Windbreakers. Haha, that's funny. And then you get just like characters just making all these other puns. Like, what was the point of that pruning scene? Like, was that supposed to be funny? What was that like? I guess it's supposed to be more kid oriented, but like it's all again it much like the racism allegory. It's way too confused with itself, I would say.
Did you think that the puns in this movie were as bad as Food Fight? Where like every other second, like Dex Dog Detective would make a joke saying "Let's banana split out of here," or "Let's jelly
Uh,
jam this thing," or whatever.
I feel
Frankly, my
like
dear, I don't give a spam.
I mean honestly, as cringe as some of the puns were in this movie, I didn't mind them that much. Like, I mean, in Food Fight, they're abysmal because it feels forced. Like none of those lines feel like they were written out because they thought they were funny. They wrote them out because they felt like they had to write them.
They were lazy.
And then Charlie Sheen just said them because that's what the script says. He didn't really put any effort into how he said them. Which I mean, it's Charlie Sheen, and he's in
Charlie Sheen.
Food Fight.
You really wouldn't expect quality out of Charlie Sheen.
No, I nope. Of course, I'm on a drug. It's called Charlie Sheen.
Charlie Sheen. Exactly. I was about to say that, man.
Yeah.
But yeah. I think it's a cute movie. I liked it fine. Uh, Nothing this movie did to really wow me that much. Uh, Again, I'm a sucker for romances, so maybe that's why I'm a little nicer to this movie than you are. But uh, that was fine. Wouldn't go out of my way to watch it again. Wouldn't buy it on Blu-ray. But you, Hal, would you recommend Elemental?
I mean, it's not the worst thing. So, like, I'm sure I've seen people say they like it fine, and I've seen people say they've gotten something out of it. It's like great. I'm glad you did. There are worse movies I've seen where people say that, so I can't really say this isn't worth watching. Like that's the thing. It's like I think this movie is worth watching at least once. Like whether that means you actually get something out of it or not, that's up for you to decide. I would say this is one of the better ones, one of the better Pixar movies I've seen in recent years. It's been a while since I've seen some of the other ones, so maybe I'd need to like really go back and kind of judge them all together. But like, I mean, even still, like even if I change my ranking where I put this, like it just doesn't come any closer to Pixar's best,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately. So like I could come up with specifics on where I would say it's better or worse than some of these other 2020 movies, but like at the end of the day, they're nowhere near. It's nowhere near Toy Story or The Incredibles or Ratatouille. So like, why would I waste my time? You know?
Mm-hmm. I'd say it does, the movie itself doesn't even like doesn't really say anything like profound. Like even some of like Pixar's more recent movies like Coco or Soul, I'd say in terms of like messages. It's very basic in terms of like what it says, but you know, not that I really expected it to go
Mm-hmm.
really deep into it, but you
Yeah,
know, it's just
yeah. I'm not
fine.
disappointed. I've kind of made my peace with the fact that Pixar will not make another movie on the same level as The Incredibles. So I'm not really offended by it. That's why I think it's like inoffensive. It's fine. Like, yeah, it's a fine movie. It had great animation and it's fine.
I wouldn't even say like the animation is really worth praising that much. Like you said, again, it's
Yeah,
like
I
we've seen.
mean,
It's like what we've seen before. I think it's the thing is one thing I've been thinking about recently is that this was the first movie greenlit by P. Docter, who's like the new CEO of Pixar, and this would have been after John Lasseter left in like late 2017. So I wonder if like when this movie was greenlit, if this was before Spider Verse, which kind of like changed the whole landscape of like how studios approach
hmm,
their animation. So this definitely feels more like 2010's Pixar than
yeah,
a lot of or 2010's theatrical animation than whatever studios are going for now.
yeah. Again,
What are
I
you gonna
think
say
it.
though? So,
No, I was just gonna say, like, yeah, I don't like judging animated movies purely on their animation. I'm gonna definitely compliment the animation because it is very good, but like outside of that, I can't really say anything about it is that great. So
hmm yeah,
yeah,
I did appreciate how they got kind of like no name actors for the main roles, like the guy who voiced the Wade. I think the only I've looked at his letterboxed profile or like his filmography. And the biggest thing he was in Jurassic World Dominion, and yeesh.
Yeah, so he really upgraded, I guess.
Yeah, upgraded in some way. And
Yeah.
the actress who voiced Ember wasn't really in anything except the Fred 3 Camp Fred, baby.
Oh, so she downgraded. Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah. Sucks to be her.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. That's a compliment I give the movie. It didn't really bank on like its celebrity voice cast. And so, the characters, they just, none of their voice acting was distracting. Like none of it was particularly amazing, but like, none of it was bad. It was just they just hired these people because they were good voice actors. Like, and I think
I
they
like
do
Leah
a fine job.
Lewis's voice actually. I thought she was really good in some scenes in particular.
Yeah, she works. I just can't say any of it like impressed me in any like real way. Like, it was good. I'm glad it wasn't like a big name actor for the sake of being a big named actor. Like they actually hired her because she probably just gave the best performance out of all the people that auditioned. So
I thought the Fire Dad should have been voiced by Danny DeVito
I guess.
because he had kind of a raspy voice. That would have been better if like they got him to voice him though. That's the
Yeah.
only case of like when I think a well-known actor could have been better.
I mean, I guess, yeah. I'm not really like a huge diehard DeVito fan. Like, I like whenever he shows up in movies. I think people kind of like, just want to see him in more stuff because they think he's funny in other stuff. Like, yeah, he was funny in Hercules because he was fit for the role, but that doesn't mean you can just put him in any movie and it's all of a sudden better. I don't know.
But he was
That
also written for the role.
Yeah, he was also written for the role, so of course he's going to work out the best. Like, I don't know. That's a whole other discussion for another time, I would say.
Yeah. Anything else you want to say about this movie, or
All hail Claude.
an active god or an active Claude?
Yeah. Claude. Whoa, brother.
Is that going to be the next meme? Is a Claude that you basically take any movie or piece of media and put Claude in the title?
No. Maybe not. I care very little for Claude.
Pixar has very few memeable movies on the same level as DreamWorks. The only other one I'd say is Cars. So
Yeah.
Claude is like the only other memeable Pixar thing.
I guess. But even then, like, it's like a forced meme because like Pixar really wants Claude to be like that forced meme, and it's like, you can't really
they
force
posted how they want. They were trying to write off the Minions: The Rise of Gru hype from last year because they were trying to show off the audience reactions to him, and yeah,
that's embarrassing.
That's desperation.
Yeah, that's embarrassing.
I'm glad people are enjoying this movie though. I mean, like,
Yeah.
I like animation Twitter as usual, like hypes up any movie as the best thing ever, which most of them aren't. But this
Yeah.
movie was it was not as bad as I thought it would be, not as good as I thought it could be. But
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the best thing about it. It's not the worst.
All right, so that about does it. I think you've linked your stuff before, but Hal, I think you can find yourself on Letterboxd and YouTube and
True. Very true. Yeah. Too many movies. We the most recent episode we talked about Romeo and Juliet Seal movie and Beauty and the Beast. And next episode, I won't spoil it here, but like, whoo boy, you guys are in for something special.
Ooh, I'm excited.
Yeah.
I missed the Romeo and Juliet Seal watch party though. I'm kicking myself right now.
Oh, don't worry. As long as you experience it one day, that's the important part.
Okay. All right. So thank you, dear viewer, for watching this thing. Support me on the Letterboxd or the YouTube or whatever. See you later. Don't be a lazy bone. Bye.
Oh, hell, Claude.